operated fairly by every country all over the world.
And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
We are responding with countermeasures worth 26 billion euros.
This March, under the second presidency of Donald Trump, the US has again backtracked on various tariffs against its trading partners, yet this time differently against its close allies or neighbors. Trump confirmed that, starting at the beginning of this April, the reciprocal and sectoral tariffs will target trading partners including China and India. As Trump intends to use another round of tariffs on goods from a range of countries, then one might be curious to ask, are American people and businesses ready to take the blow?
So I guess as a non-academic perspective, just as an American citizen, I mean, it's sad, of course. These are countries that are our allies, and then tariffs, so generally speaking, tariffs are going to be inflationary a vast period of time. They're always going to be inflationary, especially if you include long-run counter tariffs. They're looking at alcohol, they're looking at, of course, wood, steel, and those things are, of course, inelastic goods that go into things like, of course, housing and cars, which then those will increase in the price. So overall, not good. It's very sad, especially how we treat our allies.
Based on recent estimates from the nonpartisan Peterson Institute for International Economics, Trump's tariffs could drive up costs for the average US household more than $1,200 per year.
I think the tariffs are going to make things more expensive for the average person, from groceries to supplies, building supplies. That things have been going up in price consistently, so I don't see how adding a tariff would make things go down. That the price of eggs was $7 for a carton of eggs. The price of vegetables and everything have gone up significantly. I think avocados are going to be like $5 for one.
On top of the repercussions for the consumers, another concern is whether the tariffs will affect US exporters. And looking at the history of Trump's first term, obviously this concern is justified. If the outflow of US dollars decreases with the reduction in the money supply, the value of a currency will definitely be pushed up, making American exporters more expensive for buyers. Those targeted countries may also impose retaliatory tariffs. As USDA estimates, from mid-2018 to 2019, agricultural product exporters have lost $13.2 billion due to retaliatory tariffs.
This is a very dangerous time for the global economy, and I think we need to be very, very careful that not only on the short term we might go to a slowdown, we might go to a global recession, but I'm very worried that there will be consequences that the rest of the world will also, retaliate.
You can already see that, I think, in the Chinese tariff increases are on many agricultural products, soybeans. And this is an area where there's already been some tension because American farmers know that they rely on exports, and they rely on exports very heavily. When they face these higher costs, they're also going to transmit their political anger.
The unpredictability of US tariff policies has recently caused investors to sell stocks. The three major stock indexes of the New York Stock Exchange has also seen a sharp drop recently. The Magnificent Seven tech firms have seen their stock prices falling from high. A lot of wealth was wiped out. Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz said, Donald Trump's tariff threats have made the US a scary place to invest, and it may unleash stagflation.
It has already realized that, since its first administration, that trade war with China, when it comes to reducing deficits and trying to reshore manufacturing away from China and back to the US, it's more or less a failed objective. For the Trump administration, in the long run, it will continue to diminish US leverages when it comes to negotiating trade deals with the rest of the world, because they know that it can be easily overturned by the next American president. The rest of the world will soon realize who's the real trustworthy trade partners.
Since the beginning of Trump 2.0, it is clear that his trade policies were disruptive to the world economy, doubling down on tariff wars against China, while slapping hefty tariffs on traditional allies. This has triggered a wave of distancing among partners, many of whom previously mimicked US tariff barriers against China during his first term.
So yes, from both an economic standpoint, from a political standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, the more that Trump is viewed around the world as really carrying a hammer and being willing to use it every time, every place, there is definitely a risk that the U.S. at minimum is alienated from some of its allies, and perhaps even worse, begins to see those allies and really the global South especially begin to turn their attention to other countries, believing that there's much more stability and much more optimism and a much more open hand of friendship waiting for them in comparison to the sort of bullying nature that often is exhibited by Donald Trump.
By all counts, what most of the world perceives now from Trump's American first foreign policy is a kind of belligerent unilateralism. And it is dangerous for the US to treat allies and adversaries alike as pieces to be moved around to chessboard. It will certainly bring consequences to itself and the global multilateralism.
Europe has to think more with its own head, I would say, and will have to adjust to the multipolar reality of the world. This is not going to be easy, but I think the 25% tariffs that are now being promised by Donald Trump to Europeans will be a major wake-up call and will expedite thinking in the direction of understanding that Europe has to adjust to multipolarity.
To this point, we see Trump's insistence on more aggressive tariffs as he promised to bring more manufacturing jobs back, as a highlighted part of his MAGA movement. But will things work to his promise? Stay tuned for our next episode to find out.